Okay, hello everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our Child Life Q&A. I am Deanna Bryan. I'm the program manager at Hope for HIE, and I'm here with our certified child life specialist, Annie Gunning. Hello, Annie.
Hello, it's good to be here again.
Yes, good to see you. So something that came up during HIE Awareness Month back in April, there were a lot of parents expressing kind of their needs or requesting strategies or tools for how they can help their kids self-advocate. And a lot of that was really just like how to communicate about their diagnosis to friends, to teachers, to others, to themselves, to siblings, the whole spiel. So that's what kind of motivated this conversation. So I'm excited to learn more
Yeah.
from you and kind of navigate this topic. But before we do that, as always, Annie, please introduce yourself. If there's anyone new and doesn't know you, what's your role at Hope for HIE, and what does a child life specialist do? And I know you're so much more than that too, but you can speak for yourself.
Yeah. No, thank you. I know. I feel like every time I'm like, this is what I do, but we do that. We just want to make sure everybody knows for those who are new. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I
Yeah,
am a
I mean,
child
we
life
have like
specialist.
10,000 members in our community now, and not too long ago it was 9 and 8. So we have new people every day. So it's okay.
Right. Yeah. No. And a lot of people don't know what child life is. So I'm happy to share. As a child life specialist, we work in the community, and historically and typically you find us in a hospital setting. And our job is to help kids cope with stressful experiences. Typically, that does involve something in the world of healthcare, whether it be a diagnosis, a new diagnosis, a family diagnosis, surgeries, procedures, tests. So our job is to help kids cope with those things. So we do preparation, we do education on new diagnosis. We do all of that through medical play. Our basis for that is doing it in a developmentally appropriate way that kids can understand. So we do a lot of play and interaction, therapeutic activities, creative expression, all of those things to help them cope and understand what is happening in their life at the moment with their healthcare.
Yeah. And I didn't even know, honestly, like how important a child life specialist was, or even what it was, until my daughter was in the hospital many years ago. And she was just, stressed and confused because she was so young. And then someone came in and made it all better. Turns out, that was someone like you. I had no idea,
Yeah.
so it's amazing to know that you're a resource and that you're out there for people. It's awesome.
Yeah, and I feel like with Hope for HIE, I kind of eliminated what I do specifically for Hope for HIE, because this is virtual. But I do
Yeah.
the same kind of things, but I talk with families on the phone. I talk with kids on the phone. I provide resources, anything to help them cope again with what's happening. So I've done a lot of Zoom calls with parents, prepping them
Mhm.
in other parts of the world on a procedure that they have coming up that's very common with kids with HIE.
Mhm.
We have started the Super Sibs program because child life specialist, it's family focused. We want to support the whole family. So
Right.
incorporating, the whole family and including the siblings is just as important as the patient.
Yeah. And you're also a certified grief counselor too, right?
Correct. Yeah. So just because of a lot of the work that I was doing in the community, I felt like that was important to have that extra base of knowledge. So I did become certified as a grief counselor, and I do a lot of grief support too,
Mhm.
with siblings, with parents, and even children of adult patients in the community. But yes, I definitely like to support our families in that area as well.
Yeah. I know, and we're just on kind of the tail end of creating all these resources for our Super Sibs July drop too. So
Yeah.
for Super Sibs and those Super Sibs in our lost community as well. So we'll make sure to communicate that and have people who haven't signed up yet make sure we do so before July. But for
Yeah.
now, I digress.
I know. We
How
could
my
talk
brain
about that
works.
all day.
I know. Let's put a pin in it. And go back to teaching our children with HIE self-advocacy skills. So as I kind of referenced to before, HIE is very complex. We know that. So it can be really challenging as a parent, as a guardian, or whomever, to explain to your child and help their siblings understand what it is.
Mhm.
And therefore, how would you go about helping a parent or a guardian navigate this conversation with this child to help them understand a little bit more about themselves and their diagnosis?
Yes. I think one of the things I always like to start with when you want to explain to, and I also think that this goes hand in hand with when you're talking to the sibling or you're talking with the child to HIE, that these conversations can just go hand in hand. But you want to ask them what they know,
Mhm.
have you noticed that I've been on the phone a lot lately or making some appointments? Have you noticed changes in how you feel? Like, kids notice things, and so we want to make sure that we're the ones giving them that information and we're providing them with the right resources, and so they're not just making things up for their on their own.
Right.
So if I ask them, what do you know first? I did a virtual support with a caregiver, and asking them, I'm like, so what does he know about his diagnosis? Like, does all these new diagnoses that have come up for him, does what has he asked you about that? She's like, honestly, I don't think we've ever asked him what he knows about
Yeah.
it. We just assume they know. And I've
Hmm.
had the same conversations about siblings. So just asking them what they know first, that kind of gives you a jumping off point of where to go from there. And then using honest brief descriptions and provide continuous information regarding any kind of changes in diagnosis, prognosis, just changes in health in general. So honest information does not always mean every detail. So you can adjust according to their age. So younger
Yeah.
kids, brief, honest, direct information for everybody. Like, that's what everybody needs. But for younger kids, it's a smaller amount. It's not as many details. Older kids are going to ask more questions. So again, asking them what they know and then taking the lead from there. And if it's something that you feel like, we need to continue with, and they're ready for a break, or you can tell they've reached their point, then that's when we're like, okay, it seems like you need a break, you're kind of
Yeah.
changing the subject, and that's okay, but I feel like this is important, and we're going to come back and we're going to finish this conversation in a little bit, like, just
Yeah.
so you know that it's just an ongoing conversation, and it just evolves, and we
Yeah.
want the kids to come to us for information. So when they're asking questions, that's a good thing. They're being curious. We want them to ask us questions because we want to be the ones to deliver the information.
Hmm.
Um, let's see. Oh, and I do always like to close with identifying a trusted adult. So we're ending that conversation. So let's talk about, who are the people that you can talk to and ask these questions to? Is it mom? Is it dad? Is it a counselor at school, a grandparent, an aunt? Identify that trusted adult for them so that they know that they have other people that care for them in their lives that they can also go to get that reliable information. Like, that's always a good way so that they know there's other people.
Yeah. I like that
So,
too because having one person be a trusted source of information, and this is something that got pointed out to me recently, just in my own parenting. Like we're responsible for a lot of their perceptions and perspectives too. The way we react and the way we talk about something can really influence, their own mindset and how they view something. So
absolutely.
I just like that, you want someone trusted to talk to, so that way like you have, I don't want to say control, but you can have better, I don't know, there's more guidance to that conversation. I just like it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And in a way, you do want to have that control because you
Yeah.
want to make sure that the information they're getting is the correct information. They're not hearing,
Mhm.
because when kids hear like bits and pieces of conversations that you're having, they
Mm.
kind of start making up their own story of like what they think is happening. So
Mhm.
we do want to be the ones controlling the information that's given to them.
Mhm.
But like, we know who they can trust in their life that also gives them the honest information,
For sure.
or they can at least go to and talk to. And especially for older kids, like, it's not going to be a parent. Like, I'm talking about teenagers, it might be a coach at school, but
Yeah.
let's make sure like we know that that's a good source for them. We're not going to be like, oh, just go talk to your,
Right.
so and so at school. Like, we're going to
There's
help
a
them
vetting
identify.
process.
Yes.
Yes, I understand that 100%. Which is why maybe my child's bubble's like two people. Maybe my vetting is a little too rigorous, but that's
No,
okay.
but she's little. Like, it should be a small group, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I actually think that's a really good segue because we kind of already hit upon this idea of how to communicate it to others. And
Mhm.
once our children, especially, become of school age, that is where a lot of like this comparison of culture, or sorry, culture of comparison starts
Mhm.
coming into play. where they really start to notice some differences in themselves or the way that they navigate a situation versus others. They just become a little bit more aware. So
Mhm.
as I'm just confident that any parent would want their child to be able to explain or communicate what HIE is if the circumstance, called for it, any of its misconceptions or any of their needs in a way that's appropriate. So maybe
Mhm.
let's start with teachers.
Mhm.
How can we help our kids communicate on their own to teachers so that way it's not all coming from the parent and that they have a voice too?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one of the things I think when we talked about doing this, we want to be able to empower the kids. Like we want to provide them with the right information and then empower them so that they feel confident in sharing their needs and advocating for themselves. So
Mhm.
communicating with their teachers is obviously very important. They're with their teachers a lot. So using
Sometimes
that
more than at
open,
home.
yeah, like during the school year, like that's who they're
Yeah.
they're with them all day.
Mhm.
So we really do want to
Mhm.
make sure that the kids feel confident in sharing what their needs are and that they understand what their needs are so that they can, get what they need at school and not feel like they're asking for something extra or this is exactly what they need. So using that open, honest, ongoing communication about needs and if they're changing. So whatever, things ebb and flow. Like some days you need different support than others, and a diagnosis ebbs and flows, like pain comes and goes, like
Mhm.
all those things change. So just keeping that communication up for the teacher is helpful, and maybe providing some education with the teacher at the beginning of the year, like this is what HIE is and these are the secondary diagnoses that come up that my child has. So providing all that in education up front can be really helpful just so you get them at the beginning. And identifying that trusted adult for the child at school at the beginning of the year and have them maybe meet them ahead of time. Like, let's go meet some people. Let's figure out who, like when you're starting your new year. I know we're ending a school year right now, but this is for this when the summer ends and we're starting a new year.
It'll
Let's
be
go.
here like that,
No,
unfortunately.
meet those people. Let's identify them. Let's talk to them. And then these are the things you can tell your child to say. I learn best by, I need, I get overwhelmed with. These things help calm me down. And then maybe even coming up with some type of a signal between the child and the teacher that, like, is just, I need a break. And, I need to, whatever that signal is, it could be like a nose tapping or whatever. It can be discreet. So not everybody knows. Um, but just having those fill in the blank sentences, maybe that's written down and the teacher has those. Or maybe the child, says those things, but just giving
Mhm.
them the beginning part and they fill in the blank so they can communicate that to their teacher as empowering.
Yeah. And then we, start to navigate this wonderful world of peers and peer relationships, which is,
Right.
I know it can be very, very stressful for
Mhm.
kids, right, and for caregivers too. So, how? So
Yeah.
how do we help them communicate if it comes up, if it, like, again, if the situation calls for it, if they feel like they need to talk about it to their peers, how do they do so in a way that makes them feel comfortable but yet empowered, as you say?
Yeah, the theme I think that I keep going with today is simple, honest, and direct.
I
And it's
like
the
it.
same thing with talking with peers and friends because kids ask because they're curious. I feel like when a kid asks a question about, like, why are they walking that way? And a parent will be like, shh, don't say that. We don't
Mm,
want to hush that. Like, let's embrace it and let's just talk about it and keep it open. That's how we foster inclusion, and we help that. We don't want them to think that that's a bad thing to talk about. Like, let's just talk about it, and usually we can give kids a simple answer and an honest answer. And they're like, oh, perfect. Okay, I get
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So we just, you can talk with your child first about what do they feel most comfortable with sharing. So we don't want them to share anything that they're not comfortable with. And so if someone asks them a question, they can say, I don't really like to talk about that, but these are the things I really do like to do. So kind of changing the focus because they might not be comfortable talking about everything about them or something specific that they have going on with them. And that's okay. And that's when the parent might need to step in and share,
Yeah.
after the child talks about, after they kind of communicate to each other what they think is okay to share. So the child can still answer like, oh, I don't really like to say that, but I love playing with blah, blah, blah. Can we play this? And then in another example, of language to use. Like if a kid were to say something like, why do you have to go to the doctor all the time? Or why are you going to the doctor again? A younger child could say something like, when I was born, my brain was hurt really bad and I was in the hospital for a while. So now I have to go to the doctor to make sure my body's healthy.
Yeah.
Like that's really kind of all that they need. Or for older kids, you can give more details. I
Right.
have HIE, which is a brain injury I got from birth. Or again, this is one scenario.
Yeah.
It could be different for everybody. So now I have to go to the doctor and make sure I'm doing okay. And then if
Yeah.
the kid asks another question, then again, it's simple, honest, direct. Why do you
Mhm.
have that tube in your stomach? This is how I eat. Some kids eat with their mouth. I have a tube in my stomach. It doesn't hurt
Mhm.
and it keeps me healthy and I can still play and swim and do all the things. So again, changing the focus to this is just how I can do whatever. I can play.
Yeah.
And older kids can say something like, this is how I get my nutrition, and the food goes straight into my stomach.
Yeah.
So just adjusting it.
Yeah.
Another thing, why do you use crutches or use a chair? They help me move so I can play. I like doing crafts. I like doing art, video games. So it's just, this is how I move.
Yeah.
Everybody's different. No two people are alike anyway. So this is really not this is how I move. That's how you move.
Right.
That's all.
I really do feel like there's just kind of like a cultural, like, I don't know, movement, I guess, where just, especially in schools that really embrace inclusion. I know that this is, from my perspective, and that's my opinion, it's not fact. I know that, but I just think that, having experience in the system, I do feel like I heard those conversations take place
Mm-hmm.
all the time. And it's so true that, you know, the more you can almost like, if you're uncomfortable in the conversation, using simple, direct, honest language can sometimes just like shut the conversation down because it's like there's no more room for questions, so
Right. Yeah,
yeah.
you
And
answer
it's
it
like it's
simple and direct and
yeah,
honest, and then the kids are
yeah,
satisfied. They're like, because they're just curious. They just want to
yes,
know. And to them, they're
yes.
like, oh, that makes sense. Okay. That's how you
And
move.
it
Great.
and it's so true, like, and I guess it depends on the person and the experience, and again, this isn't the case, it's not a universal fact, but I really do believe you when you say that a lot of it is stems from curiosity. It's not
Hmm.
ill intent. It's not to make
Yep.
fun. I know, again, that's not always the case, but I
Yeah.
think I like to believe in the good, and so I truly do believe that there are a lot of kids who just
Yeah.
wanna know, and
I
there's no shame
agree.
in that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And, by answering their questions, we're letting them know that it's okay to ask that question and we're
yeah.
going to talk about it.
Yeah. Using the boundaries, like you said, that they have,
Yeah.
for sure.
Hmm.
So that was the school system. So let's maybe talk about, and it might be very similar, the communication tools we use maybe to help our child advocate for themselves when the time is appropriate for them,
Hmm. Hmm.
and age-wise, developmentally wise, with their healthcare team. Because as you said, like, a lot of the kids in our community, I mean, the hospital stays, doctor visits, inpatient, outpatient procedures, those are common. So it is helpful to have some tools in your
Hmm.
toolbox to use when you feel like you want your kid to start speaking for themselves. So how do we help them navigate their needs to their healthcare team?
Yes, and I think that the younger we start doing that with them, just the more confident they become in sharing that information because we really do want them to learn how to advocate for themselves in this setting because it can be really scary. So, of course, one of the things that I would mention would be get your child life specialist on board in the hospital and have them help and kind of translate and talk to the kids in a developmentally appropriate way and explain those procedures and visits in a developmentally appropriate way so that the kid understands. Because usually, I've heard kids say this too, especially as they get older. Like, I felt like the healthcare provider and my parent were like having a conversation around me, and I was there. So we want to
Yeah.
make sure they're included. So by having the child life specialist there, they can be the ones to be like, hey, they just said EKG. Do you know what that means? And just kind of help translate that and make sure that they're understanding what's going on too. So that
Mhm.
those resources, when you have them, please ask for them and please use them.
Yeah.
But for the parents, making sure that you are educated in whatever the procedure, the test, or the diagnosis is, because the more that you understand, then you can help prepare your child for it. And so then you're both empowered. You understand what's going on, you can tell your child what's going on, and then they can ask the appropriate questions and advocate for themselves when they understand the whole situation.
Yeah.
So I think before an appointment or before you're going to see a doctor or whatever, you can ask, do you know what doctor we're going to see today? And use open-ended questions. So like, we're going to see neuro doctor tomorrow. Do you know what that is? Or do you know why we're going? Or what do you want to know about this appointment? So let's just ask the questions. And then what questions do you have that you want to ask them? Have you been feeling anything lately that's changed that you feel like you want to ask them? What do you want to say? And then do we need to write that down? Should we write it up? Should we put it in the phone? Should we put it on their communication board? Like, whatever their ways of communicating, let's give those to them so that
Right.
we know those are their questions. And then, do you want to ask the doctor or do you want me to ask? Either way, these are your questions. You have a right to ask them, but you can do it or I can help you.
Yeah.
And then allow the child to communicate using whatever is best for them. So making sure you have those things with them, however they best communicate. So just making sure the team knows, their healthcare team knows how they communicate best.
Yeah.
And you can always say to your child, like, I would like to share, or I remember you telling me last week that you were feeling tired. Do you want to share that with the doctor or do you want me to? So
Yeah.
you're kind of giving them that choice. Like, this is something I think we should tell them. And that can be kind of non-threatening, like just something how you were feeling. Let's just kind of start there.
Yeah.
And that's empowering them to build that relationship and trust with their healthcare team, which is ultimately what we want.
Absolutely. So I would love to segue into kind of the emotional needs and emotional self-advocacy, because as our kids grow older, they navigate new and changing circumstances. It's important to help them understand their emotional needs, especially when it comes to aspects regarding their diagnosis and just their way of life. So how can we encourage our children to express their feelings and concerns about their HIE diagnosis, whether that's to the parent, or to someone else in their life?
Mhm. Yes, we want to keep the conversation open and ongoing. So that's always something we want to continue to build. It's never a one and done, but talking about it during their regular playtime or during a drive in the car, or because when they're doing something fun that they normally do, because their defenses are usually down when you're just playing. So that could
Yeah.
be a good time to bring something up. So they won't feel maybe so like on the spot, and
Yeah.
they feel more open to talk, especially for older kids. I feel like for older kids, definitely like more of an indirect approach works best. And then
Yeah.
creative expression for that self-expression. So any kind of art, drawing, writing, journaling, painting, like whatever that is, providing that outlet for expression can be helpful. Just coping with those feelings.
Mhm.
And then with younger kids, and it can be for older kids too, but I feel like when you use books and you can offer those relatable characters, maybe kids don't want to say, oh, I feel like this or this happens to me. But when it's a character in the book, they can relate and they
Hmm.
can be like, oh, she felt blah, blah, blah. I felt like that before too. So it offers just that connection to another character. And
Yeah.
there are some older kid books too that I think I'm putting in like the Super Sibs send
Yeah.
out that I thought were really helpful in that aspect. So just having them make those connections through books can be really helpful. And then validating their feelings is always an important one. And doing role play with conversation. So that seems like that was a really hard conversation for you. And you seemed mad. It's okay to feel mad. Do you want to talk about how maybe that conversation can go for you next time? And do just
Yeah.
a little bit of role play for it.
Those all sound like really good ways to kind of help like communicate, but also, and like, but you said also cope. And I know that was kind of my next question was, how do we, how do we express needs, and then how do we cope with them? So I know you mentioned a lot of creative expression, things
Mhm.
like that. what are some other ways, like especially if there's a moment or a situation where our children are feeling down, particularly, especially if it's something about HIE related or not, I
Yeah,
guess really.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
What are some other ways to cope that you would love to share with our community?
Yeah, I think peer support,
Mm,
friends, especially as kids get older, that those peer support groups become more important, and just helping them find those connections so they have those friendship groups,
yeah.
or kids at school or in clubs or sports, whatever, just so they have that peer connection. Again, the trusted adults, maybe not you, maybe not a parent, but someone else that they just have that connection with, that they can talk to, maybe a counselor, outlets for free play, having those times of just free play are very helpful. Like,
Mm,
we don't need anything guided. It's just open, and let's just let them play through their feelings and emotions for younger
mhm,
kids.
mhm.
Music, and then, like we said before, creative expression, the drawing, the writing, the painting, the sensory play, all of those things are also helpful coping tools.
Yeah. That really resonates with me too, because sometimes I think a parental instinct may be to there's a problem. I want to help you solve it. Like, what can we do to solve it right now? And sometimes, like when you said free play, and I think about my kid, sometimes the best and the most effective and quickest way to calm her down is when she just has the time and space to do what she needs to do in a safe environment, obviously, but
Yeah,
um, and like
yeah.
supervised whether she knows it or not. You know,
No,
like,
you are spot on. Like, there's so many
yeah,
times, like, and I think as a parent, you automatically want to be like, "Oh, I want to fix it." You hate
yeah,
seeing your kid upset and sad and hurt.
yeah,
But we don't have to fix it. We can
right.
provide the space for them to just
Mhm.
kind of have that feeling and feel it and work
Yeah.
through it a little bit, and then offer them the tools of, like, "Hey, let's put some music on," or, "Hey, let's." And I've been guilty of it. Like, my daughter's crying in the car. I'm like, "Oh my God, don't cry, don't be sad." And I'm like, "What am I doing?"
I know. You
It's
have a
okay to
degree
feel.
in it.
Yeah,
It's
I'm like, "It is
wonderful.
okay to feel sad about this. I would
Yeah.
actually feel really sad about this too." And
Yeah.
she just cried, and I'm like, "You cry as long as you need to."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that helps. That is a
It
coping
does.
strategy. It's just crying, cleansing, getting all that
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
And like the longevity of the effectiveness of it too. When we when we solve everything for our kids, then it doesn't always necessarily teach them the skills to do it by themselves when they are more or less autonomous in the future, whatever that looks like for them. So
Yeah.
you know, it is helpful to give
Yeah.
them the space and the tools to do it on their own. It's teaching them something
Absolutely.
that they're going to
Yeah.
use universally, yeah, throughout their whole life.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
we always end with recommended tools and resources that you have our child life stamp of approval. So, are there any developmentally appropriate resources or books or whatever that you recommend for teaching children about embracing and understanding their condition and then advocating for themselves when they need it?
Yes, so there's a few that I do have some books, and we will post these in, like, our
Yes,
takeaways
yeah,
for
yeah.
everyone. So there's a few books that I like. El Defo, if anybody's ever heard of El Defo, that's more like a late elementary, early middle school book.
Mhm.
But that is a fantastic book. That was actually one that I was referring to when I was talking about characters in the book.
Yes.
But it's a fantastic book. Billy's Sister, It's Okay to Be Different, My Family, and Hi, My Name is Jack. Those are all, like, a little bit younger.
Hmm.
But those are all great books. Most of them talking about a child or family that has a child with a disability, or just different learning needs, things like that. So again, with that family identification. There are a couple podcasts that I wanted to share. So because I do work with Child Life on Call too, all of our Hope for HIE families have access, well, to the Child Life on Call app, which is wonderful. But anybody has access to the Child Life on Call podcast, and episodes 89 and 99. I thought would be very helpful, talking specifically about advocating for your child and how to help your child advocate for themselves. They have some good tips on there. And I think one
Awesome.
of those is like a 12-minute. But
Nice. Quick car
I
ride to Publix and back.
I know,
Perfect.
I know. Like, sometimes I just pop in my AirPods when I'm
Mhm.
walking, and I can listen to a
Mhm.
podcast. Like, oh, this is a good one. I got to remember it.
Mhm.
But those were great. And then childlifeoncall.com also has, like, a resources and books page, and it has, like, some therapeutic activities on there that are like freebie downloads, which I think are helpful. Piper and Enza is a great.
I've heard of that actually.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're all about advocating, kids advocating for this themselves and helping with family advocacy, but they have some great books and tools and resources on there as well. And then the Courageous Parents Network. So it's
Mhm.
courageousparentsnetwork.org. They also have some great things on there for kids, like for, a child that maybe has HIE or any diagnosis, for siblings as well, and for parents about advocacy. So you would just have to go on and then kind of look under resources or tools, and then you would see different things. But I have looked at all of those and used all of them, and I think they're helpful.
Awesome. And like you said, you already said it. This will, if you missed that, or you need to replay it, or you need the links or the QR code, those will all be posted in our key takeaways shortly, and on our blog regarding this session that we just had. And I know that we'll probably meet again in June, probably just talk about, like you said, peer support is important. We're going to start advertising it a little bit more. SOAR, the program that you're facilitating and creating, all of the words, initiating, you got it, for children with HIE to have that peer support and connection. So I think it would be really special if maybe you and I met live and had a conversation about that in June for our community members, just so that they know it's coming. Yeah.
That's a good idea. Yes, I would love to talk more about SOAR. I'm excited about getting that program started.
Yes. Look at us having, business planning conversations for all the world to see. I like it. That's multitasking at its best.
Yeah.
Thank you so much again for joining us. It's always so wonderful to talk to you and to hear your expertise. And you're just so valuable to me as my friend, but also just to our Hope for HIE community. So thank you so much. And we will see you very soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. See you later. Bye.